Fresh Cash Friday, my friends. Today, locking in $10,000 here. You can see right here, locking in $5,000 in one of the Express funded accounts. And then in the Quantower Combine account that I started yesterday, you can see hitting the goal, $9,000 in profit. Today, $5,000. Yesterday, locking in that profit as well. So the Quantower Combine is done. It's ready to get funded. And, well, we locked in profit in the Express funded account as well. Fresh Cash Friday. Let's talk about this really, really beautiful setup that I want to show you guys. The breakout here on the NASDAQ and the breakout here on the NASDAQ, the breakout on the ES, how we saw this move, the setup, and all that fun stuff right here in this video. So make sure you stay tuned. All right, first things first, we already know what happens, what loves to get filled. Gaps love to get filled. This morning, we had a pop off of this pivot point on the QQQ. We ripped up here, and then guess what? We sold down below the VWAP, below the pivot, and hit this pivot point down here, which was also that gap fill from the close yesterday. So we closed yesterday. We talked about this live stream this morning, so it was all live. We had it all planned out. We got the breakdown, the fill on the gap. Look, we filled the gap. We bounced there off the pivot point. We went to the moon. This is the SPY chart. If you're trading the ES, keep an eye on those pivots on the SPY. You can't go wrong by knowing where the ETF is at and where it's moving, especially when there are gap fills and things like that. So right now, looking here at the 3-minute chart on the ES, what we had the NFP this morning. So the non-farm payroll came out this morning. We bounced around this area. Going into open, we were above the VWAP, right? We're above the VWAP. We like the VWAP. We pulled back into the VWAP. So right here at open, we pulled back into the VWAP. We bounced. I got long here at the 36s, and I sold into this push up to the 48. So that was the first beautiful trade of the day. We had this little breakout kind of like right here that I actually took a long on as well, that we pushed up, and then we got denied at that 50 area. We had a bunch of liquidity at the 50 area on the book map, and I ended up jumping out at that point because we just did not push through the 50s. So after we didn't push through the 50s, I was like, all right, I'm out. So this next really, like this was the setup of the day right here for this gap fill. We had this overall trend. Guys, if you want to make trading very easy, just draw trend lines on these setups, right? Look at this. We pull back. Guess what? Well, I don't want to buy the dip right here. I don't want to buy the dip right there. I'm not buying this dip. This is not the dip. This is a breakdown. This is a pullback into the VWAP. No reason to get long until we either bounce here, we start to break back out, or we start to push back up. We show strength there. So what we had was the pullback to the VWAP. We pushed back up into this 41 level, and I took a short right here off this 41 level, and we moved all the way down here to the 20s. I took profit into this move down into the 30s. We did it live on YouTube there. We had to move all the way down there to the 20s though. So the nice move to the 20s was there. And then look at this bounce off of the gap fill. So we filled the gap there on the ES and then ripped back up. And what's amazing about this today is we talked about this exact move happening before it happened. So the issue was we filled the gap, right? We're filling the gap. We hit here. We had this support from the NFP as well. So kind of like a triple bottom bouncing off that 20 level. So at that point, I'm like, hey, this thing looks like it wants to break out. So I actually took a trade right here for a long to push back up to the VWAP. We pushed back to the VWAP right there. Beautiful. All right. So what's the big focus here? We talked about this before it happened. I was like, all right, look, I want to see this thing break through the 40 level, turn that 40 level into support. And guess what? We broke through the 40 level. We break through 40. We push up here to the 49.50s. This is the high from earlier. We had the high from earlier right there. So if we hold this 40, we push up to this high from earlier. And look at that. It's exactly what we did. And what was interesting about this is the NASDAQ also kind of played out perfectly as well. You can see here on the 15-minute chart, this is the ES, but look at how nicely this looked on the 15-minute chart. Look at that. Push through the 40s right there. The breakout. This is the Lux Algo price action concepts. If you want to check it out, there's a link down below to get 30% off. 30% off there. And, well, look, we're turning that 40 area into support. We push up there to the previous high. And we also kind of have the VWAP. You know, all these things are acting as support. We had the idea of bouncing off the lows down there at the 20s. We had the gap fill. Momentum came back in. This 15-minute candle took over the last 15-minute candle. So at that point, I'm like, hey, if we get back above 40, we turn it into support. I think there's a really good chance that we retest the highs. And we talked about all of this happening before it happened live on YouTube. So the NASDAQ, I want to show you this. I drew this yellow line. See this yellow line right here? I drew this yellow line basically explaining what I would want to see happen on the NASDAQ. Now, let's get rid of that. You see the yellow line. We drew it live on YouTube before it happened. So if we look at this move, what really happened here, right? We got above this kind of 500 level. I talked about this 500 level needing to be cleared out. We want to get that 500 level get cleared out, which it ended up doing. And look how we turned the VWAP into support there. We bounced off the VWAP, we pushed back up, we closed above 500 here, and look at this push up there to the 580. So we had that high from earlier at the 580 area, and look at how beautifully this just went do, and pushed up there. So this played out exactly like we thought it would. We talked about this move before it happened live on YouTube. We're talking about these moves, we're talking about the momentum and levels to be looking at and all that fun stuff. So there it is. Today, Fresh Cash Friday, absolutely killing it. The ES, the NASDAQ, the SPY right here, the SPY bouncing off this pivot, turning that into support, pushing up. There's that pivot there, the 452, 49s. But I really think this gap fill bounce off that pivot today was just absolutely a beautiful setup for a pushback up here. We got to the VWAP. Once we got above the VWAP, like I said, we get above the VWAP, we're going to push that 50 level. And you can sit here and say, oh, you're just talking in hindsight. But we talked about all of this stuff happening live on YouTube this morning for Fresh Cash Friday. So if you haven't already hit that like button, subscribe button, you know what to do. We're doing it live. I'm showing you guys kind of my thought process, what I'm going through, and all these key levels that I'm looking at during the actual market open and close. So there it is. I'll talk to you guys later on.